Welcome to Deep Dive Dialogues, where the conversations go deep and nothing is as it appears on the surface.
All right.
So I'm happy to have you with me today on my podcast. And today we want to talk about your long career. I'm not going to say a year amount because I'll let you tell me how long you've been doing it for. We're going to talk about your career in picture taking. So, I'm interested to know, Miss D, about this hobby/profession because I deem you to be a professional.
Even though I have never been formally trained.
But you've had a gallery, and this is professional to me. How long have you been taking pictures for?
Well, let's go way back.
Okay.
The first camera I ever owned was a Brownie Kodak camera about the age of 7 or 8 years old.
Okay.
It looked like a enlarged Brownie.
Okay. So that's what they were called, brownie?
Brownie, because they were brown in color and had a squarish shape. And I took pictures of people during that time, but I've always had an interest in nature because when we lived in, I remembered I was very young, 3.5, maybe 4 years old. My father was in the army, and he was stationed in Yokohama, Japan. So he went ahead, and then my mother brought me, my older brother, and a brother under me. We went on a ship to get to Japan. And I remember that it seems like the moon and the stars, that like you could just stretch your hands up and touch it. And I was very, very impressed with the landscape of the beauty of by it being, I didn't know then, on an island and all of that. So that's where I remember being impacted by nature. And the other thing that really had me focus on nature is that back in the day, and it's still present now, but more so then, you would get wall calendars from places from around the world.
Oh, yeah.
And so and it would be a different picture for each month.
Yeah.
So I would look at that and see how beautiful those pieces were and thinking, wow, I wish I could go there. And one of the places I remember was Lake Louise.
Lake Louise. Where's that located?
That's in Alberta, Canada.
Okay. Have you ever been there?
Alberta, Canada, by far, hands down, are the most favorite place I have ever been to photograph. Been to Canadian Rockies twice. That's in the Canadian Rockies. The last time I was there, I believe, was 2009 or 2010.
Okay.
And I have some pictures around the house of that location.
So for your first camera, you said it was a Kodak. Did you buy it or did you ask for it for a gift for Christmas?
I certainly didn't buy it at the age of, I know I had to ask for it, but maybe Christmas present, birthday, because we just didn't get stuff because we wanted it.
Yeah.
It was tied to a holiday or something.
Or an event.
Yeah, you may get some clothes that you may not have tied to a holiday, but all stuff like that was tied to a holiday.
Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that because when I think back on my picture taking journey, my first camera was a Kodak as well. And my sister had a paper route at the time. And we both collected tips from her paper route to be able to go to the store. Because back then they sold them in Walgreens or
Right, right.
And we would both save up the money from the tips to get Kodak cameras and take pictures of each other. And then, develop the film later.
More than likely, I would say my dad probably bought it on a military base because Petersburg is the closest city to Fort Lee, Virginia, where my father was stationed. So he would have bought it on the base, I'm sure.
Okay. After you get your first camera at age, you said 8 or 9?
8 or 9.
Okay. Do you start developing albums or what did that journey look like from the first time you touched?
Well, of course, it was regular film. And I don't remember having albums, but I do remember having access or keeping once the pictures got developed from the drugstore, because that's where you would go. I would keep them in my room because I had my own room.
Okay. And so, how long would you say it's been since you've been taking pictures now?
Travel wise,
Just collect all from the start to now. How long has your
let's do some math.
Okay.
I'll be 78 my birthday.
78.
70. You look good for 78. And if I started at 8,
Oh,
so we talk about 70 years.
okay. And so I know walking in, I saw the photo albums and all throughout the house, in the gallery.
Yeah,
We see the picture.
and if you open that door over there, it's full of photo albums. That closet.
I know this is going to be a huge ask, but if you had to estimate how many pictures you have,
Pictures or albums?
Both.
Do you have a calculator? I have no idea. I probably print close to about 500 or maybe up to 1,000 maybe a year.
You print probably 500 to 1,000
easy.
And so I know upon us encountering each other, you gifted me pictures. And I think, okay, one, I want to talk about the difference between picture taking back then and picture taking now. Or do you still use a Kodak camera? Or do you use digital cameras?
I use a digital film camera. 35 millimeters is just not available. The quality, developing them, because I have never ever had any interest in a dark room.
Oh, so you've never had interest in a dark room?
Never.
Okay.
I'm interested in the creative aspect.
Okay.
Not the technical. I would love to collaborate with someone who does about really got it, that technical stuff, know how to work the technology of today. But creatively.
Yeah. Okay. So when we first met, you gifted me pictures. And so what is that like? How did you come up with that idea to gift people pictures? Because I think that's very unique. And one, it's shocking in a sense because you don't see the printouts anymore. So a lot of the photo sharing that's done in present day is uploading to Facebook or social media platforms, but you don't see people gifting one another photos very often. It still happens, but not as often. So what inspired you to get from your artwork?
From the very beginning, when I got into the nature photography, I wanted people to see what I saw.
As a kid taking pictures, as you became a mother and a wife or went on throughout life, how did you maintain your ministry and develop as an artist through those times? Would you say that your family or your daughter inspired your art at one point, or do you stick more to nature settings?
There's two parts to my world. In terms of family and friends, when I was a teenager, when I went to parties or places, that a lot of times I would bring my camera.
Okay, so you were the picture
lady
among friends,
among my friends.
Okay,
and taking pictures of families and friends. That was just part of the flow. That's what I did, and people would expect me. They knew I would come with a camera. And a little secret is that early in, when I took pictures of friends or around people that I may not know or not comfortable, that camera was a place for me to hide.
To hide behind the camera. Being that you are the photographer and like to take pictures, how comfortable did you feel on camera growing up? Being on camera versus being the picture.
I was really around people that had the camera. I was the taker, and I tell people that now. I said, it's rare that my picture get taken.
Yeah.
And I'm also particular about who touched my camera.
Okay.
So not everybody can roll up. No, because I've had things that mattered to me and they were broken or mishandled. Sometimes it was accidental and sometimes it was intentional. So I'm very protective of things that matter to me, be it my camera or people and myself. I'm very protective of me.
That's very deep, Miss D. Would you deem yourself to be a camera shy person?
No,
You don't think you're camera shy?
no.
But you feel more comfortable behind the camera.
Yeah, because there are things going on in the moment, and I enjoy being the observer and the recorder.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. But as they continue to be their own person,
So you have two?
I have a son. My daughter is the oldest.
Okay, okay.
And my son, 4 years younger than his sister.
Okay.
I always wanted my children to grow up to be able to fly out of the nest. I was not a nest holdings hostage.
What they call it is an old school mama.
But I also expected, and they knew very, very young, what I say is what I mean. And you were taught the boundaries. You violate the boundaries, you got what you got.
And what was that?
Whip, spank. I would say spanking, but back in the day they called it whipping. Okay. I knew people who whip. You know, a child abuse really what it mounted up to, but generationally and culturally that was a part of child rearing,
Corporal punishment.
yeah. And even back then there was a line. Even back then, that if
There was an
parent
unspoken line.
if they went past this line, then you really, taking your fist and hitting your kids in the face and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
And so what do you think about how society has adjusted and evolved to the point where it isn't very becoming to let hands on your child at all? Do you think that's hurting society, or do you think it's helping, or do you just think the times have changed?
It's a mixture. Understanding yourself as a parent is critical to how you will discipline or should discipline your kids and how you were disciplined. There are parents that who have children now who were it went over the line when they were children, and some pledged that they would never ever. We make promises to ourselves so that we can survive in the moment. And some parents have made promises they will never, and you fill in the blank, or go to the extent that it happened to them, or they will mimic what they had. That's how happened to me, and
Okay, so since you said that you consider photography to be your ministry and not your career, what career did you have while you were doing your ministry? Do you feel comfortable talking about that?
I am a retired licensed social worker.
Okay, okay.
And
so that's very interesting.
And I knew by the age of 12 for sure I wanted to help people.
You have a history of advocating for those who can't advocate for themselves.
People,
and
young or old.
And so that is what inspired you to move into social work. Was it social work for what type of social work was it, for kids or?
Well, when you're in high school, they ask you a part of your senior yearbook information what you want to be when you grow up or graduate. And I wrote child welfare social work.
Okay.
But I end up working in the intake department at the welfare department in Dayton, Ohio. After I finished college, that's my first job.
And what's your degree in, Miss D?
I have an undergraduate degree in sociology, a minor in English, and I attended Kentucky State College or University. College. And I also have a master in executive MBA in organizational management. I have loved organizing. Being the oldest girl of a family with 8 children, I learned early
How to organize.
how to organize. They respected my authority.
So do you think that being the oldest prepared you for motherhood?
Being the oldest girl, it prepared me for life.
Yeah.
So motherhood, yeah, because I had plenty of practice.
Yeah. And I would say that too, that I would say that anytime you know, growing up, you're able to take some type of control or autonomy over situations that allow for it.
I was destined to understand adult issues because very young, I would I could understand finances, and my mother would send me on the bus by the age of 10 for sure. I was catching the bus to pay bills. Oh, because sending stuff in the mail, and it wasn't a lot of checks and all of that. But again, we had segregation, is navigating banking practices in the community. So I would catch the bus and go and pay the water bill. And I had cash on me more times than not. Every now and then maybe a check, but it was cash. And I knew how to ask for receipts. I knew how to make sure we count the money out. And I never considered myself short. I'm just not as tall. Okay.
So Ms. D, how far are you?
5'1" now, but I was 5'1.5" back in the day. I lost a half a inch.
I'm sorry to inform you that is short.
No, not as tall. Not as tall. I had somebody one time say, "You're short." It was a guy, I'm pretty sure it was. And I looked up at him and said, "When you get as tall as a redwood tree, then I will say I'm short. But until then, I'm just not as tall."
How tall is a redwood tree, Miss D?
Oh, 60, 70, maybe 100 feet.
I don't think anybody's going to be that tall.
That was my point. That was the point.
Okay.
I won't let people try to decide who I am.
And I love that about you.
Yes, I just,
Okay.
hold your own mirror.
I love that. When you get as tall as a redwood tree, then you can call me short.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to use it. Do I have permission to use that? All right.
The world would like for you to feel less than. The world would like for you to feel that you don't measure up. And the truth is, people who do that, they're shame baits. They have learned to use making someone else feel less so they can feel at least a little more of themselves. I'm not the one. The mirror of the world have never been one that I checked off as a requirement for me to be who I am. And some of it, some of the underpinning reason for some of my processing had to do with segregation.
Ooh. What was that like, existing during a time of segregation?
In Petersburg.
Or what did you learn?
Yeah, segregation taught me so young, and my teachers as well, do not let anyone tell you who you are. Do not let anyone tell you that you have to measure up to their measuring cup. Measure yourself by your own measuring cup. I was talking to someone not too long ago that if my measuring cup is 8 ounces and it's concentrated content in it, you have a gallon measuring cup and your contents is diluted. Which one would you rather have?
The measuring cup with absent of dilution?
The concentrated.
The concentrated, I guess that's more.
Yeah, that's right. Because you will have some level of control how much of the concentrate you're going to bring less concentrated, and you will have a better quality because you're determining the taste and the texture or whatever. Diluted, You may have a lot of it,
but
I got a better taste. I got more to save and decide on how much.
right. In Ohio, I've seen more mixed people, more mixing of the races here versus places like Texas. So I say that when we were growing up in school, my siblings and I being a mixed race, it really wasn't a phenomenon. It wasn't something like there were tons of mixed people in our school. It was something that we were normalized to. Moving to Indiana and to the other southern states, like as I get to Texas, it's not as common to see that. Therefore, when people see us, it was like, oh, well, we haven't seen mixed people before.
Right.
You guys are special because you have, whereas to growing up here in Ohio, we didn't feel on a pedestal less than. We felt like we were amongst everyone. And even now, so I would say when I walk around Ohio, I see more of a mix of blacks and whites, not just in couples, but sitting on the lawn. You'll see a yard sale with a black man and a white man sitting next to each other. Going into restaurants, you'll see them sitting at the table, dining across from each other. And so I'm like, I'll admit my ignorance in history because I'm like, I don't know if it's because we were one of the states that mixed first, or if just Cincinnati in itself was more diverse in that aspect.
Right. There were laws in many states that prohibited race mixing. And if you did, you could get lynched, jailed, or some other punishment. Laws. And the North and some of the other states that were deep South, they had unwritten laws. You couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. And time has changed enough with the more accepting of racial mixing, so to speak. Interesting that this has come up. I was a race relations leader or employee for the Army when my husband at the time, he was in the Army.
Okay.
And I had a degree in sociology and wanted to work. And he was stationed in Berlin. And I was able to get a job with the Army doing helping with race seminars.
Oh,
because they had a lot of racial tension.
And so what did the race seminars consist of?
Well, some of it dealt with the realities of the question you had about how do you feel when you see X race with Y race, and was able to have dialogues with military people who are affiliated with the Army to talk about it and felt safe enough that they could and answer surveys. And a lot of them, many of them said that it was more upsetting for them to see a black man with a white woman, and less upsetting if they didn't like it, though. They saw a black man with some other ethnic group that wasn't considered dark and inferior. But it was very clear that really upset them. It goes back to some of the mentality of slavery, where the master's wife messing with some of the male slaves, where the master could have any woman he wanted to, because you couldn't say no. You had no say about your body. So if he checked you out and he wanted to rock it, he'd just go down there and get.
I wanted to rock him. Is that what you guys called it back in the day?
No, rock him. I'm trying to update it. King. Oh, they called it like y'all called it.
Well, I don't think so. So, okay, this is still touching on artistry. We moved from photos a little bit, but I like this conversation. So, you know that I specialize in linguistics. So I often say that I can tell even from the 50s and 60s that the intonation, not just the words, but the intonation, the speech pattern in which people spoke back then has evolved and changed to present day. And so one of the things that I admire about the previous generation and the way that they spoke is that everything wasn't just displayed outwardly and openly. There were some insinuations and innuendos, and you had to think more when people were talking because they weren't just going to outright tell you everything that they meant. So even in the R&B songs, when they're talking about whatever you just called it, rocking it, they didn't come out and say we're doing X, Y, and Z. They had a roundabout, more romantic way of talking about it. So I think that when it comes to like the way that older people speak, or just older school R&B and songs from back in the day, I prefer those because it leaves more to the imagination versus just outright saying.
We had an outside way of talking about what you're talking about, and we had to close the door and talk just as nasty. All of them songs.
So
Yes,
so it was just the perception that you guys were classier, is what you're telling me.
we knew when to say the D word, the S word, and I'm not talking about SH either. I'm talking about SC.
SC. Okay.
REW.
Oh. Making me blush. We use those words. You guys use those words?
And sometimes we can be very animated with words. Not only did we say the words, but we did the gestures so that in case you didn't know what S word was, we would.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So it just.
We're going to take this out.
No, this is fine. So it was just the illusion that the older generation was classier.
Well, it depends on who you measure it against. You know, well, the broad brushes doesn't work for any now, then, or in the future.
Okay.
You know,
and so also too, what would be considered more provocative back then, nowadays will probably only scratch the surface.
Some things, yes.
Yeah.
And some stuff is like, oh, that the new word is blah blah. But back then, that word was, you could compare the language.
Right.
It still had the same meaning.
Right. Right. So, moving back to picture taking.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you say, for example, in poetry and
I also enjoy writing.
Oh, do you do poetry to this day?
Yeah.
What kind of poetry?
Well, it's more. It isn't always rhymey stuff. You know, I can get something and because I'm unlike you, I can sit here and just say it. I have to have the script to read.
Yeah.
But it allows that we all have a place in us, and I want to always give voice to that place, the most private place, the scared place. Because as long as it's mute, you can't process it
Right.
as well. Or if you're hiding a part of you and you don't allow light of day to get into that place, you can never be who you were always intended to be. Because things need light, it needs air, it needs truth.
I agree with that. So I wanted to say that in all your forms of artistry, the experiences that you described, the plethora of experiences from working in social work to traveling to having family and a spouse that was in the military to raising kids, how would you say that's inspired your artwork? The plethora of experiences that you've had.
Nature allows me to put life situation on pause. Whatever is going on in today's world, I'm on pause a lot because it's just too much. And never mind that this will be a whole nother time for us to talk, but I front loaded about a lot of things. I've shown things, events that are to happen. It's not a whether it will happen. It's a matter of when they will happen. It allows quiet time for me. And I can be somewhere else
Mm. Mm.
in beauty. And I also take pictures of things that people will say, oh, she must be off her medication. Take a picture of a dead bird or a dead this or a mole on a spot. But those are my own things. I just like to keep it real and just keep things in context. I'm not one to always want to have this uh wonderful, flying around and everything is well with the world when it's going to hell in a handbasket.
I feel that.
Yes, yes, but I don't want to never ever not see beauty because then you're going the whole opposite direction. So I want to just stay as balanced as I can for me, not the world's scales, my scales.
Okay. So, Miss D, we always end deep dive dialogues with an original quote, which I'm confident you'll be able to give us because you have tons of original quotes. But if you could think of an original quote to leave the viewers with, what would it be?
Wow. An original quote. Love who you are.
Love who you are. I love it.
And always love whoever you become.
Or who we're becoming.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you, Miss D. You've definitely been a wonderful mentor in my life, and you continue to be. And I love your artistry. I'm glad that I got the chance to come down here and look at this. And I thank you for sharing your wisdom and your beauty with the viewers of Deep Dive Dialogue. So we will see you guys next time. Okay, Ms. D. Tell me this piece of advice again. This is crucial. One thing that we need to know.
Don't be a Rolodex hoe.
What's a Rolodex hoe, Ms. D?
A Rolodex hoe is a list that a man or woman, I guess, could have, but this is in reference to a man. He has a name of different women in different parts of the country or state or cities, and he would go through the alphabet. He had the B section. He said, well, look, let me go and try the D or the T section or the M section. And think you're going to call me out of the blue and we're going to, kick it. People would say, friends with benefits. You know about friends with benefits? I ain't know people had it. And I said, I ain't no Rolodex hoe. You ain't no Rolodex hoe. He said, keep going in the alphabet. He said, well, what is that? I said, you go through the alphabet and decide who you want to do. And everybody is cool. And when you leave, you wipe it. You clean yourself off. She, clean herself off until you come back to that part of the alphabet.
Oh my gosh. Miss D, you're teaching me something today.
He laughed, and then he found out, oh, she ain't a Rolodex hoe.
She ain't no Rolodex hoe.